Hey everybody, Pastor Hans here, and you have reached day 13 of our study of John. We're walking through the book of John, and today we are in chapter 13. So you may want to pause and go ahead and read chapter 13, or just listen to what I have to share and then take some time to dig in. When I was just out of college, I worked with a group of youth from a church in the Fargo-Moorhead area in North Dakota. And we got in a van and we took those kids all the way across South Dakota, down through Wyoming, into Colorado, and we took them into the Colorado Rockies. We had this long trip across the plains, and then we finally got to the mountains. And I will never forget, as a kid who grew up in rural North Dakota, standing at the base of the mountains, the Rocky Mountains. I had really never been to the mountains before. And there I stood with a backpack, all my gear, and I remember looking up at the mountaintop. And it was gorgeous, of course. And there was a part of me that was just in awe. There was another part of me that was a little bit terrified, because it was a long ways up. And we were going to the top. Well, in chapter 13 of John, we're experiencing something very similar. We've been on this long journey for 13 chapters, and now we're at the base of a mountain. This is it. This is where we're about to climb a mountain that'll take us to the climax of the book of John. This is it. A couple of things about the book of John. It's the fourth gospel that was written. Matthew, Mark, and Luke were written far before John. It was the last one written. And so there are some things in John that John sort of assumes you've already read. You've already read the other accounts of Jesus' life. And so John doesn't take the time to go over some of those things again. Instead, he adds his own flavor. He brings a different perspective. He sort of tells a bit of the story behind the story. He answers the why behind the what. So if we take a look at the first few verses of chapter 13 of the book of John, it goes like this. It was just before Passover, the Passover festival. Jesus knew, listen to this, that the time had come for him to leave this world and go to his Father. Again, we've been on this long journey. Now we're at the base of the mountain and we're looking up, and there is a hard climb that's coming. We know that the days ahead for Jesus are going to be a tough road. It's interesting. It started by saying it was just before Passover. In the book of John, Passover is mentioned just 3 times. And every time we hear Passover in the book of John, we should sort of perk our ears up, because we know that Jesus is telling us something important. It's sort of a signal or an indicator that Jesus is going to reveal something that's really important. For example, the first time we hear of Passover, Jesus is at the temple, and he climbs up to the Temple Mount, and there he clears the money changers from the temple. We all know that story. But as soon as that's over, the religious leaders of his day, they sort of challenge him. And Jesus says some really important words on that Passover. He says, go ahead, destroy this temple, and I'll rebuild it in 3 days. Well, what's Jesus getting at there? Well, he's revealing something about who he is. He's revealing that his body is the temple. He's sort of foreshadowing what's to come. He's saying, you worshiped in the temple, now I am the one that you worship. You believe that God resided in that temple? No, I'm the one who comes. I am the Son of God. Whenever Passover is mentioned, Jesus reveals something important. The second time Passover is talked about is when Jesus, he multiplies the loaves and fishes. Thousands are gathered on the side of a hill, and they brought him a couple of fish and a few loaves of bread. And what does he do? He feeds the multitudes with them. And on that day, that Passover day, he says, I am the bread of life. I'm the one who will nourish you. And now again, here, he reveals something really important. He says, now my time has come. Now you pay attention. This is it. We're at the base of the mountain, and we're about to climb to the mountaintop. The passage goes on. He says this, having loved his own, John writes, who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. What's interesting about the book of John is showered in love. It's sort of dripping, if you will, in love. It's soaked in love. At the very beginning, at the very base of this mountain Jesus is about ready to climb, John reminds us that the whole reason for this story, the whole reason for what Jesus is about to do in Jerusalem as he makes his way to the cross is love. A love for you, a love he had for the disciples, a love for his world, a love even for his enemies. Well, the beginning of John is, chapter 13 is thick. He goes on and describes that evening. He says, the evening meal was being served, and the devil had already prompted Judas, son of Simon, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. You see, this is where the story develops. It begins to take those first steps up the mountain. He's taking these arduous steps towards the climax of the story. And here in just these few verses, which are just jam-packed, we have revealed to us the sorts of things that we can't defeat, but Jesus is going to defeat handedly. We hear about death. He's going. It's been revealed. He's going to the cross. We hear about Judas, who is the epitome of hate, right? We can't conquer those things, but it sets the stage for what's about to happen at the mountaintop. It sets the stage for how Jesus is going to overcome them all. In these first few verses, it goes on. In verse 4, it says, as they sat there together, they were having the Passover meal. Jesus, unexpectedly, he got up from the meal. He took off his outer clothing and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin. He began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Before he makes those first big steps up the mountain to the climax of this story, he does something that no one imagined. Again, we talked about this. This book of John is just dripping in love. And one more time, he's going to remind those disciples, what you're about to experience, this tragic walk to the cross that you're going to have to watch me endure, it's all about this. It's all about my love for you. The washing of the feet was a symbol, a sign of why God sent his son into this world in the very first place. You see, folks, we're at the base of the mountain. We've made this long cross-country journey through the first 12 chapters of John, and now we're about to go through some hard chapters. One arduous step after another as we make our way to the climax of the story, which is the cross. And so a couple of questions for you today. In John, we arrive at the beginning of the events that tell us why God sent his son. What does the cross mean to you? What is that epitome of the story of Jesus' life in John? What does that mean to you? And secondly, the book of John it's dripping in love. How will you soak yourself today? How will your life be soaked? How will you soak yourself in the love of Jesus? Folks, thanks for tuning in.